Hey, this is Rachel Wall, and you're watching the Best Practices Show.
Hey guys, thanks for watching the Best Practices Show. We take a look at the best business practices from the best dental practices all over the world. And I have a huge treat for you. This is a mega superstar in dentistry. One of my favorite people. She teaches me things all the time. Rachel Wall, you do not want to miss this. She is an absolute expert and so much fun to talk to. And today we're going to be talking about what to do when your team members don't do what you ask of them. And I know everybody's had that challenge, and she's got some incredible insight on that. So you're going to want to grab a pen and hit the share button and settle in. And get the most out of this. Now, as you're watching this, we are shooting this live on Facebook. So as you're watching, if you have questions, just add them to the feed, and I'll give them to Rachel directly, and we'll ask the master while she's on with us live. Or if you're watching it later on, like a lot of you do, I don't know what you guys are doing. Some of you guys are watching this like at 2 a.m. or whatever. Just continue to add questions to the feed. You'll see Rachel's really good at social media. She'll respond to them and get you back. We want you to get the most out of this when you're on and watching and participating. So we're just super grateful. And thank you for all the suggestions that still keep coming in. You guys are, I've got stacks of them now. We are now up over 39,000 followers on Facebook, and over 150,000 of you have been on iTunes. And I don't even know how iTunes works. All I know is it's there. And I don't have anything to say other than thank you. So we are just having a lot of fun. We still don't know what we're doing, but we're just having fun doing it. I guess the key of it is that I just got to have people like you on all the time, Rachel. So now my guest today, she's an amazing woman. I've gotten to know her over the last couple of years. She's not only been a great friend, a great colleague, a great mentor. She's come in and helped us in our hygiene courses, coaching our coaches in so many respects. Rachel, I know who you are. Many people that are watching this show know who you are. But if somebody's watching this for the first time and they've never met Rachel Wall, who is Rachel Wall and what is Inspired Hygiene?
So Rachel Wall was the first female pirate, first and foremost. If you ever look at Rachel Wall and pirate, she was the first female pirate. You discover things when you're trying to Google yourself. And that was something that I discovered.
Wow.
Right? But this Rachel Wall is a mom, a wife, a business owner, a hygienist of, 27 years. And I founded Inspired Hygiene in 2004. And we've been just going strong and trying to grow ever since then, and really have had the absolute privilege of working with so many practices across the country and in Canada to really help elevate their hygiene services, right? How they're taking care of their patients and how their hygiene team is systematized, and what, all of that affects their production and their profitability. So that's what we do. And we really do that by really helping the dentist helping them lead their team, and really uniting the team in this belief that, when we really up-level our care and we really grow a strong hygiene department that's empowered to really help our patients want the care that is in their best interest, then the whole practice just thrives. So today's topic is just on that, is really about leading those dentists. But so check us out at inspiredhygiene.com. And Kurt, it has been my pleasure to get to know you over the last few years and your team, and just love what you guys do. And thanks for inviting me on.
I'm going to have you on a ton of times because I get to learn. This is kind of cool because I get to hang out with you, and I'm a CE junkie. So I'm going to get a ton of notes. Now, I'm just saying, if you're a young dentist watching this or a team member watching this and you've never seen Rachel, check her company out first, but at the very least, go see her speak, because, and I'll rave about you for a little bit. Like, you're a very fun speaker to listen to. You're never bored for a second. Your stories, and she speaks the language so well. You're like, oh my gosh, I've seen that a million times. Oh my gosh, I know exactly where she's going. And she's like, oh, she said that so well. So I'll just I'll rave about you forever. I just think you're fantastic and an incredible blessing profession. Now, I want to talk about this topic because you and I were talking before we went live. Like, this is a big deal. Everybody's dealt with this. You and I have dealt with this as business owners. What do you do when team members don't do what you ask of them? Now, let's talk. I always like to talk about the why before the how. Now, why is this a big problem?
This is a big problem because, as business owners, we know that, one decision or one lack of following the system today could affect things 6 months later, a year and a half later. I mean, you've seen it. From our perspective, it's, we make this switch on one of the programs, or we veer off of this particular system, and then the next thing you know, 6 months later, it's like, well, last time you said it could be done this way, so why can't we do that? And now you're in this big snowball effect, right? So I think that the why is that when we have systems in place and when we have, as you always say, those clear expectations, and I can't wait for you to share your formula on that. But when we have these expectations, they're there for a reason, right? And they're there really to make the team's job easier and to give the patient the absolute best experience and the best care possible. So I think it's easier to start with these couple examples. So I was talking with one of our clients this week, and they had a couple frustrations. And one of the things they said was, hey, well, let me back up a second. Okay. So let me give you kind of the context was we're looking at the hygiene department, and I'm looking at some of their stats and dental intel and saying, okay, so I'm noticing that it's not tracking the cancellations and no-shows. And you've shared that might be a problem or something you'd like to improve. So here's how to do that, right? And in order for the dental analytics, whatever program you're using, there are certain ways that you have to cancel or break the appointments. So there's a specific function in, whatever practice management system you're using to break the appointment that's then going to allow your practice analytics to really track that. Mm-hmm. So I brought that up, and they said, yes, we've asked the team to do that, but they just won't do it. And they won't do it because they feel like if they break the appointment in Dentrix, then it's going to put a mark on the patient's record. It's going to put a blemish on that patient's record. Well, our question is, well, isn't that what we want? We want a record of this. We want to know, is the patient canceling these appointments with 24, 48 hours notice, or are they breaking the appointments at the last minute? Like, what's happening here? So we want to know that. So why do we want to know that? We want to know that because if we're appointing the patient for a time that's just consistently not working, then maybe that's a clue that we want to ask them, hey, it looks like these times aren't working for you. Is there something better? Because it could be that we're kind of trying to pigeonhole them into Tuesday mornings at 9 because maybe they came at Tuesday mornings at 9 once, but maybe that doesn't really work for them. So maybe if we start seeing this happening, we can really have an honest and open conversation with the patient. Say, hey, look, like, what's not working for you here? Right. How do we make this better? And help them really get in for their visits, right? And really, really develop that relationship even more. Right. The other thing that it does is for the dental team, it makes it so much easier when you can see the patient's record, right? When they're calling and saying, hey, I want to get a hygiene appointment, but we see that they've had 3 broken appointments, then it makes your job easier because maybe what you might say is, you know what? How about I give you a call? If we have any changes in the schedule in the next week, I'll give you a call. Mm-hmm. So maybe that's something that we do rather than booking them a hard and fast appointment because they've got this repeat, history of breaking these appointments. So instead of you booking the appointment and then having to take the call to cancel the appointment, maybe you're not able to recover it. And now you've got to try to backfill that. Man, that's a lot of work. Yeah. So I think going to what is the thing that you're asking the team to do and they're not following through on. Right. First, starting at why do we even need to do this? And it can't be about production.
Yeah, it can't be. And I just love what you're going with this because like I need the beginner version of everything. But when I saw this happen for the first time where team members weren't breaking, they would just drag them and move them. I didn't realize that it didn't record anything. And when you break it, it records it. And so it's obviously the easy way to do it. The other thing that I've noticed that you probably see is in Dental Intel, when you break it, it records it into no-shows and cancellation times. So the dentist has a really good data point to understand how much is being canceled, because every dentist goes, no, we don't have any problem. The schedule is full today. And the team members go, what are you talking? I spent half my day like cleaning up this mess, you know? Or
the flip side of that is we have all this open time and it's all cancellations.
Right.
And sometimes it's not. Sometimes there's more supply of hygiene hours than there is demand to fill it. Right. So sometimes it's unscheduled time, and that plus a few cancellations, all of a sudden it's a really, really big problem. So in order to really identify what the problem is, we've got to track it so we can really look at it. And here's another cool thing is that if you mark it as broken, your software and your practice analytics, very often, they're going to know based on the time that the appointment was scheduled and the time that the appointment was broken to put it on, this was canceled with 24-hour or more notice, or this was broken with 24 hours or less notice.
Right.
So now it's kind of automatically creating that distinction for you rather than you having to create all of these codes, right? So we have a lot of like ancillary codes for this patient canceled because their car broke down. This patient canceled because they had the flu. We have a code for everything. Yeah. So, it's a little shortcut to that. So when there's a system that you're asking the team to focus on, you cannot focus on the production piece first. You can't say, we need to know this because we've got to track the lost production. You've got to look at first, how is it benefiting the patient to have the system in place? And second, how is it benefiting the team to have the system in place? Okay.
Yeah, and what you're really talking about is the why more so than the how, right? Because I've seen this too. Dentists go, follow this, and they don't know why they're doing it.
Right.
Right.
So often it's not going to last, especially if it requires a change in behavior, right? So breaking that appointment requires a change in behavior. They're doing something different. And when we're running through the day in a dental practice, there are a lot of things that are automatic. It's like we have this muscle memory that, okay, I start the appointment and the first thing I'm going to do is pick up, this is what we often see. The first thing I'm going to do is pick up my scaler. Well, then we've got to help the team shift to the first thing we do is we might pick up our intraoral camera after we have a conversation with the patient, right? That might be the first thing we do. Or the first thing we do might be to do the oral cancer exam. So, that's all about changing behavior. And that is super ingrained. When you're doing something every day, 8, 10, 20 times a day, like you really have to have a strong why to do it differently.
Right.
Right?
Right. Yeah.
And you've got to have your team have your back. And that goes for the leader too, right? So this is a leadership conversation. And sometimes the leader needs to be held accountable.
Right.
Right.
Can I ask you about 2 complexities? I get these questions too. Okay, so I want to ask you about this complexity. I'm a young dentist, Rachel. I've never done this before. I don't know how to talk to people. And then let me add the second one. I'm an old dentist, and this woman's worked with me for 30 years, and I can't tell her anything anymore. What do you say? Because I get those. What do you say about that?
Yeah. So what I say is, hey, let's just sit down and have a conversation. We've been doing things this way for a long time, and we were doing them that way for a reason, right? It was easy, it fast, it seemed to get the job done. And now we have this thing that we really want to track and measure.
Yeah, but this is the way we've always done it.
I know. And here's the thing though, we can't get to the next level the way we can't get to where we want to go with the way we've always done things.
Right.
Because if we do things the way that we've always done them, we're going to stay in the same place that we always are. And I just have a vision for this practice to get to this next level. So what I know is that anybody that has gone from level A to level C, they've had to change some things and they've had to refine some things. We try not to use the word change a whole lot. We look at refining. How can we refine this system? How can we tweak this so it doesn't feel like we're tearing it all down and starting from scratch? Although sometimes that's kind of what it is. We're looking at, okay, you've been doing this. Let's look at how we can refine and tweak that.
Yeah.
So we've got to look at, if we want to get to this next level, what's the why in that for the team and the patient? So what is the reason that we're going to go to the next level, rather than just kind of maintaining where we are, right?
Yeah.
Then we're going to have to do something differently to get to a different place.
Yeah. And you and I were talking before we got started, and you and I both own our own businesses. You use the 95% thing, which I totally agree. Everything that happens under your roof is a responsibility, because it's really easy. Would you agree? If a dentist is watching this, they're like, you don't understand. Like, I tell them all the time. Can you share the 95% story that you told me?
So somebody posted this on Facebook recently. It might have been, my friend. Are you just going to give shout outs because people, do stuff that you're like, nah, I'm really glad they did that. So my friend Grace Rizza, I think it was her that posted this video about Will Smith, who talked about the difference between something being your fault and being your responsibility. Okay, so I tell my team, when something goes awry, I say I take responsibility for 95% of what doesn't go right in our business. And the other 5% is just stuff happens sometimes, right? The internet is down, something crazy happens, your power goes out and you can't show up for a client meeting or something like that, right? But 95% of it, it's my responsibility. Because either I did not lead the team to have and follow a really clear system, right? Or maybe I, helped the team make a decision on hiring and it wasn't the right fit. And then some things happened and some things fell apart because of that. Or I just didn't communicate things very well. So I take responsibility for that. And then I look to see, okay, what do we need to tweak? And do we handle the solution always 100% right away? No, but usually we can get to the core of like, what was the core problem? We backtrack, right? So we backtrack on, okay, so why did this happen? And very often it was something that took place months ago. Yeah. It was a decision. It was like, yep, handle that way. And now it's showing up and you're like, okay, so we won't do that again. And here's what we learned, right? We always learn something and we always figure something out, is we got to stick to the system. And it was all done. I'm thinking of something in particular where we had a mix up with some client meetings, and somebody on our team was really generous and willing to help. And it just, it wasn't our normal system, right? Sometimes we're shorthanded. Dental practices feel that way too. It's like, we're shorthanded. We got to shortcut this. We got to do the best we can. And we do. And sometimes then we have to kind of clean up that mess later and just ask for forgiveness when, something doesn't work. So I'm rambling. But yes, I take responsibility, because now will you share your formula? Because I think this is a good point of doing that.
Well, this show's about you, but you and I share the same liking of a formula, and it's not mine. I borrowed it from somebody a long time ago, but it's E minus R equals C. So if you're watching this, just write that down, E minus R equals C, because anytime you ever experience stress in your entire life, it's some type of conflict, and conflict goes back to two variables. It's expectations or reality. When expectations and reality don't meet, you have what's called conflict. If the expectation and reality are far apart, you have a lot of conflict. Yeah. Like if my wife thinks I'm going to be home at a certain time and I'm home 2 days later, that's a lot of conflict. Yeah. Or a patient comes into your office and thinks, well, this is going to be $100. You go, no, it's $1,000. They go, what? That's crazy. So you can manage both, and this is terrible to say, but as a married man, you have to keep expectations somewhat low at times, because you can't keep promising the world. Right. You get in trouble with that. You're like, nope, I can't do that. And then you exceed expectations. Same thing in hiring, same thing. So I always say when things go wrong, you have to go to a formula, because we're all in the dental environment. We like science. Okay, what went wrong? Was it expectations or was it reality? Yeah.
E equals R, E minus R equals C. Like, write that down. going to use
Now
that.
you're the expert here, but I want to introduce one other expert that Nito Cobain, who's a mutual friend of ours, he said to me years ago, which I love. He goes, Kirk, when your team members don't do what you ask of them, you should apologize to them. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, two things happened. You either weren't clear with them about expectations, or you didn't give them the rules or tools to succeed, which were both of those variables. And I'm like, that's not helpful. And it was helpful. So I'll pause and then you take us through this. Now, I want you to talk about the long-term ramifications, because sometimes we use the word unintended consequences. You mentioned also breaking appointments and then scheduling blocks, because this happens too. You go to, as a dentist, you're like, scheduling blocks, and even hygiene. We want scheduling blocks. But when those get violated, what happens?
Yep. So same conversation with the client, and they're having a hard time. When they're diagnosing periodontal disease, something happens in the hygiene mind when there's no room on the schedule to get that treatment in. Then very often we tend to think, okay, gosh, even if I were to work with dentists and diagnose this today and come with a treatment plan, I don't even have anywhere to see this patient for 6 months or 6 weeks even. It might be 6 months, right, in some practices. Right. But even if it's 6 weeks, so I'm just going to do the best I can today, and then we're going to check it the next time. And then 3 years later, the patient is still in that cycle. We see it all the time, okay? Yep. So this practice is struggling with the ability to get these patients in. And so, of course, we talked about the scheduling, right? And that's something that we do. Often we do this with clients before the coach ever goes into their practice. We try to work to engineer the hygiene schedule ahead of time so that when they start seeing this bump in perio, for example, they've got places to put those patients and they can get that care really quickly. Because when a patient has been, you've explained to the patient, you spent all this time educating them and saying, look, there's an infection here and we can help you eliminate this infection, then they want to do something about it very often. And so then if we say, but we can't help you with this infection for 6 or 8 weeks, then we kind of pull the rug out from under all of that education and sense of urgency that we've built. Mm-hmm. So the blocks are important. That's the why, okay? The why is so that these patients can get in and have this infection treated in a timely manner, okay? And so that the hygienists don't have to keep doing this periotherapy in a prophy and having a hard time staying on time and not feeling like they're ever really addressing the disease and they're just kind of putting a Band-Aid on it, right? Those are all the whys. So then the conflict then becomes the hygienists are scheduling over these blocks with prophies, right? Because we don't have anywhere to put these patients in. So obviously we also had a conversation about capacity and, what they need to do there. But that has long-term ramifications, because if they have they're scheduling appointments for 6 months out. So now all of a sudden in 6 months, the issue that they have today of not being able to get perio patients in is still going to be around 6 months from now.
Right.
Because they're booking over those blocks.
Yep.
So that's just an example of long-term ramifications. I mean, gosh, we could name a million of them. Maybe not reading the contracts on the PPO plans that you're signing up for carefully enough.
Wait. I'm supposed to read all
Somebody this? Somebody I understand.
I get these things.
Right. I understand why you don't want to, but it's tedious, but there are things in business, perio charting is really, really tedious. But if we don't do it, the long-term ramification is our patients have unidentified disease and we're creating a lot of risk for our practice. So sometimes there's things that we don't want to do. So if you don't do it, find someone on your team that can help you do that. But that's just an example, right?
Now, I want to ask you, because I love this conversation. So, Rachel, let's say I'm a dentist and I'm like, okay, I totally get this. Okay, so I'm going to get really clear about the why. Then I'm going to put a system in place to get expectations. And they're still not doing it. Now, you mentioned this before we got started, and you had a little formula that was the RAI and then a D if it doesn't work out. Once you've created the Y in the system, can you walk us through that?
That actually spells something. Yeah,
it does. It doesn't spell anything real. Like it doesn't. It's not the best acronym, but like it was really good how you
It is
described
good.
that.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you just recently interviewed Catherine Eitel.
Yes.
And Catherine Eitel is fantastic. And I've even had her work with our team
Mm-hmm.
and help me as a leader. And so this was something that she gave us, and I hope I'm saying this right, but I've used this repeatedly and found it very helpful. And the team totally gets it.
Mm-hmm.
Is first when expectations aren't being met, and the team member isn't following the request that you've made, right? So maybe it's we need to honor these blocks in hygiene, and here's the why. We've been through all of that, and still they're booking through. That is remind, right? So we're reminding them of the system, reminding them that, hey, we've asked you to honor these blocks. We put these in here for our patients for a reason,
Mm-hmm.
right? Then a week later, they're still booking into the blocks. I'm asking you to honor the agreement that you and I had,
Mm-hmm.
that you were going to honor these blocks. Right? What help do I need to give you to make it easier for you to honor the blocks?
Right. Pause right there, because I like how you're
Yeah.
using a question. So instead of saying you need to do this,
Yeah.
I like how you said that. What do I need to do in order for you, like, give us the importance of a
Yep.
question instead
Yep.
of a direct.
So also, what's not in place to make it easy for you to honor this agreement, right? So with the blocks is, well, I can't honor it because there's nowhere else for me to put these patients. So we either need more hygiene days, or we need to add a day. We need to ask, Rachel, if she can open up a day and come in. Like, we've got to figure out some solution, because I hear you saying we need to honor these blocks, but I don't have anywhere to put these patients.
Mm-hmm.
So, identify what the obstacle is, right? Because if we just keep saying you have to do this, but yet we're not looking at what's getting in the way, then it might not ever happen. And we might lose a good team member because we haven't identified what the true obstacle is.
Right. You'll be amazed by what you find when you ask.
Yep. So I'm asking them to honor the agreement, and then I'm also asking them what's getting in the way of them honoring that agreement.
Mm-hmm.
What's getting in the way? How can I help? You honor this agreement, and then just keep asking questions until that obstacle comes up. And if the obstacle never comes up and there isn't one, then you're getting some good information there too as well. And then if you then go another week or two, or whatever the period of time is for you to identify if this is being followed, and it's still not happening, then you insist, right? So I insist that you follow this system. This is something I'm expecting of everybody on the team and myself. And if this isn't met, then we're going to have to have a heart-to-heart conversation about, your place in the practice.
Yeah. Now, if that doesn't happen, we move to the D, which spells raid, which is terrible. But I didn't realize it.
I just saw that when I wrote it down.
I didn't realize that. I think it was RAI, and then if it doesn't work, you go to the D. So D would be, now you've come to a point where people have chosen not to. You've done everything you can, right? I mean, do you find that to be true?
I feel that that's true. If we follow these, and if we do it in a calm way, right? And we really listen when we're asking, we've got to be willing to listen, right? So if it is, I feel like the obstacle is it's putting a mark on these patients, chart, and now they're, marked as a delinquent patient because they're breaking their appointments. And okay, so tell me why you feel that way, and tell me what's bad, what you think is going to end up happening to the patient because of that. Like, share this, explain to me, and you really listen. Right. And it might be that you get information that makes you shift the system a bit. Right. So if it's like, look, I can't physically right click on that to break the appointment because my mouse doesn't work. And I've asked you 8 times, can I buy a new mouse? And you've said no. So you know what I'm saying? So that's where we take our ownership in. Have I addressed the obstacle? Right. Or have I empowered the team member to say, just go buy them out? Like, you don't have to ask me every time. You can spend up to $100 without asking me.
Right.
So I'm totally going off tangent, but sometimes that's where these things go.
Right.
We work all the time with hygienists that are, when we go in and our coaches are assessing their instruments, for example, and they're looking at their ultrasonic tips and they're a nub that is doing nothing, and that's what they're working with. And we say, well, have you asked for new equipment? No, I haven't asked, because at one point we were on a really tight budget and they said, we're not ordering anything right now. Right. I said, okay, so let's talk to the dentist about that. Mm-hmm. And then very often what comes up is, well, yeah, for the month that we were in 18 months ago, yeah, we asked, let's don't order anything else this month. But that was 18 months ago, and I didn't know that you were working with these instruments that had no working end.
Right.
So it's often a communication, or there's some obstacle, or the communication needs to be opened up. We really need to listen.
Yeah. Now, Rachel, you have an incredible business. You've got an unbelievable team members. I've met them. They're awesome. Your business has grown substantially. I want to ask you this question. Like, when it comes to the idea of leading team members and telling them what to do problems ever go away? Because, like, as a young business owner, you might be thinking, well, it gets bigger and grows, and these problems they don't go away, right? They keep coming, right? Have you?
And sometimes they get more complex. Yes.
Right.
Because as your business gets more complex, then your systems get more complex, and then there are more moving parts.
Right.
Yes. So no, those don't go away. However, I will say that as you formulate and as you develop your right fit team, right, the people that are on the bus, that are holding your mission, and that you really have explained the why, and they understand that, and you've built that relationship, and you're honoring them, that takes time. But once you've done that, then problems do come up, but you're able to just handle them, and the team is like, yep, I get it, I'm on it.
Yeah. Now, I wrote that down. It's the right fit team. I think that's the holy grail in business. Would you agree? Like, when you get the right, what is your secret? Like, what have you learned anything, or do you have any secrets? Like, and you say, hey, look, I've lived this thing a million times. Mm-hmm. I've lived 9 lives trying to get here, and a few things I've learned along the way. What would you say that would be?
I think this formula, right? E minus R equals conflict, is be really open to what the expectations are, right? So when you're interviewing someone, or you're putting a job description or something out there, you've got to be really open and transparent about what they can expect and what they cannot expect. And, let's say you're hiring a hygienist, and you'd really like for them to be able to go to 4 days, but right now you can only, provide them 2 days of work. You got to be transparent about that. Like, don't hire someone and say, yeah, we can give you full time, when you know good and well that you're not going to be willing to carry their salary, for that schedule to grow. Now, if you only have 2 days of work for them now, and you're willing to carry that salary for a while and build it up, then fine. Mm-hmm. But tell them that.
Right.
So here's the deal, is we know that we've got about 2 days of work here for you, but I feel like you're the right fit. We really want to grow this to 4 days. And so we're going to work together on that. The whole team's going to work in growing that. And just don't freak out when, you've got a couple days that are really light. Mm-hmm. So that's just an example. I mean, as we bring on coaches into Inspired Hygiene, and a lot of times you've got to hire people just before you really need them. Mm-hmm. And that's a little scary as a business owner. Yep. But if you can be transparent with your team and say, here's my vision, here's where I see things going, and we're going to work on this together to really build this up, I have found that works really well. I would also say that we use some assessments. I mean, we call them personality assessments, but I know that you are familiar with the Kolbe. Yep. We use the Kolbe, and we use the Kolbe really, really diligently when we're hiring our business team.
Yeah, and it's spelled Kolbe. I get that question all the time.
Yeah. Kolbe.
You use the A index?
Yes, we use the Kolbe A. Okay. And we are likely going to be now using what they call, I didn't think about this until just now, but they call it the right fit, where you can actually plug in tasks for that individual and different work styles that you need this person to have before you even hired them. And then they'll show you what the Kolbe assessment should be. Right. So what I have found, it's kind of like when you're dating and you have these expectations for your partner, mm-hmm. you need to lay those out before you meet someone.
Totally agree. Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise you fall in love with somebody, even though they just don't even remotely fit the expectations. And then it's hard.
Yeah.
And a relationship, personal relationship shouldn't be hard, and really a working relationship shouldn't be hard either.
Right.
And people are going to be so much happier if they are working in their unique abilities, in their unique kind of mode of working, right?
Yeah.
They're going to be much happier, much more productive, and all of that.
Absolutely. I just think there isn't anything that trumps organizational health. When you go to work and you're like, oh gosh,
yes.
these people are healthy.
Yeah.
And they're all in.
And I really like them. And
I like them a lot,
Yeah.
I love them in a work way.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Really great. Yeah. Yeah.
So, if you're watching this, just summarize, you're going to see why Rachel's so brilliant. So number one is obviously having some type of identification for somebody having your office, their responsibilities, what they can do. I love the Kolbe Index because it shows you their real true work DNA. Some people say, oh, I'm really good at getting stuff done. The Kolbe will flesh that out and they'll say, this person can't get anything done.
Yes.
Like, oh, and then get really clear about the why, put a system in place, and then use that formula, which I'm going to put that on a slide. RAI. I might put the D on an extra slide so it doesn't distract
I like that.
But you know how this is. You can let something go for way too long, weeks and months.
And then what happens too is your team loses confidence in the leader. Mm-hmm. So we have seen it so many times when, there's a team member that everybody else is expected to do this except for this team member. And then finally, it is hard. It is hard letting people go, right. And I have not had to do it a lot, fortunately, but I have had to have some hard conversations, and it is not easy. Mm-hmm. However, what we have seen is that when that happens in a tight, and we're talking about like a lot of you listening, aren't in a 200 person company. You might be in a 10 person company. And so everybody's actions affect each other. And man, once that person is released to go find their place where they're going to be happy, everybody just takes a collective sigh of relief, and you just see the energy go through the roof. So
we call it freeing up their future. So.
Yes. And honestly, I've had that conversation of, I know this is not what's making you happy, and I know you want to go do this thing. Yeah. And so I'm giving you the opportunity, and I'm going to do it in a loving way. And I'm going to give you a couple weeks to get yourself, so you don't have to worry about your income for a couple weeks. I'm going to take care of that, and you get to go figure out what's going to make you happy.
Yeah.
And it has worked well. Now, so all that is to say that your team has to have confidence in the leader to uphold those systems and to keep everybody equally responsible for whatever those expectations are.
Amen, sister. Now, I did get a great question from our good friend Deepak, I just love Deepak. He's just thoughtful. These are very thoughtful questions. So he asks, he just typed this in, lack of time is often to blame for rushing important conversations.
Yeah.
So what happens is it's a bunch of telling. And as we know, telling is not selling. You help me, help you approach is usually the best. I say have conversations when you have the time, even with no specific agenda. And often great conversations happen in this space. Yeah. What are your thoughts?
I totally agree. Make the time. So when something happens and you're really frustrated, don't address it on the fly.
Right.
Right. Because that's going to be a rushed conversation, to Deepak's point. Mm-hmm. And it's 99% chances it's not going to come out the way that you would want it to come out, right? Mm-hmm. At least that's what I know about myself.
Right.
So take a deep breath, give it a little time, and then address it when you have the time. And it could be something that you address to the whole team. Say, hey guys, we've asked everybody to do this and it's not working. So now I'm asking you, what's the barrier here? Let's talk through this.
Mm-hmm. Love
Yeah.
it. Love it. Rachel, I love every minute I always get with you, and we're going to have you back so many other times. Now, I'm just saying this again for everybody's benefit. If you haven't seen Rachel, go see Rachel. Now, Rachel, I know people are going to be watching this. They're going to want to be able to learn more from you, see more of your stuff. Now, keep in mind, people are listening to this on iTunes, so they might not have the privilege of seeing what we're seeing.
Yep.
How can people find more of you, and how, if I want to reach out to you, how do I get a hold of you? And wait, first of all, tell me what you do. Let's say I'm a dentist watching. I got 4 hygienists and it's all over the place. I got a hot mess. I'm running 100 miles an hour. How can you help me?
Yep, absolutely. That's our favorite thing to do is help all of your hygienists get consistent with their verbal skills, how they're working through the exam process with each of their patients, really coming up with a refined flow to that hygiene visit. So they're doing things very similarly, right? And yet being able to put their personality into it, and also helping you get all your systems, your protocols, if that's the term that we want to use, in place so that they're being applied consistently across the board within your hygiene department, and your team is supporting that, right? So it can't happen in a silo. The whole team has to be supportive of that and know that hygiene has their back, and hygiene knows that the team has their back. So whether that is perio, whether it's restorative co-diagnosis and that whole experience when the doctor walks into the room for that hygiene exam and really refining and making that more efficient, to the recall, recare, reactivation of patients, new patient experience and that kind of thing too. So, anything that surrounds hygiene, clinical, hands-on, you've got one hygienist that's really using his or her ultrasonics and you want everybody to do that, we can help with that too. So anything that involves that hygiene department, we love to help teams really get that refined, take it to the next level.
And her website is inspiredhygiene.com. And you can also reach out and get a hold of her at Rachel. Now that's RACHEL at inspiredhygiene.com. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah. Cool. Well, stick around while we say goodbye to everybody else. Rachel, I'm just, again, so grateful. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, always a blast to hang out with you, Kirk.
We get to talk about anything we want to talk about. Most of the time, it's just fun and educating. So, so if you enjoyed today, do us a favor, just hit the share button, share it with your friends. Keep sending us suggestions that things that you want to see from Rachel, because we're going to keep having her back. I already have 30 topics I want to interview her about on perio and like behavioral things and checklists and hygiene, all that stuff. Like there's got to be a better way to explain this to patients. And we'll talk about all that. So, and keep sending us suggestions for other shows you want to see. And until we see you guys next time, keep watching the Best Practices Show. You guys enjoy the rest of your day.